As you make newsletters, you should keep in mind just some very basic principles about newsletter design, just some things that will make your newsletter look a bit more professional. We're not going into a lot of detail here, but just some things that I think will help it look good. And I have here a sample newsletter that violates most of the principles of good newsletter design. All right, I have a title here, which is fine. Pipe organs today and the date. And then I have several articles. Notice the headlines for each of these articles are all different. They're in different styles. This is one style. Here's a different font and color. Here's another different font and color for a headline. There's another one. There's another one here using different fonts for the headlines. You should not do that. You want something that's going to grab their attention. You want something that's going to be noticed, but it should be consistent. So if you decide, for example, that this is the way you want your headlines to look, you think, okay, that looks like a good headline style, then do that for all of them. Make them all the same. It's the same thing with the fonts in your newsletter, in the articles. Here is Times New Roman. This font down here is Calibri. This font here is Britannic Bold. This is another Times New Roman. Over here we have American Typewriter. You don't want to have a lot of different fonts. You want to be consistent. So your headlines are one font and style. Your article text should be another one. Okay, now that font could be more eye-catching. You don't have to just stick with bland Times New Roman or something like that, but make it consistent. That's the key. Make it consistent. So those are a couple of things to watch for. Now, you have several articles in a newsletter, and you want to try to avoid having an article start in one column and go to the next column, like this one does. Notice it starts, especially this one, it's right down at the bottom of this first column. It starts there and comes up here. And you say, well, how can I avoid that? What you can do, or you can do little tricks, like maybe you rearrange the order of your articles. So instead of having this here, let's see what happens if I move this article. Instead of having it third, have it second. Okay, that doesn't help because now it pushes this next article down. So another possibility is, let's just add some more space. Notice I just added a return right there. That pushes this next article to the top of the next column. So that's another thing that you could do. You can add space. Now you don't want to have a whole lot of blank space, but sometimes if you just add an extra blank line, it's not that noticeable, but it makes the article fit there. Similarly, this is probably more important, you don't want an article to start on one page and go to the next page if you can help it. Notice this article here about Fisk completes installation in Academic Dean's office. It starts here on the front, it goes over to the back. Again, you want to try to do something to avoid that. Again, you might try, for example, if you take that, maybe if you put it right here at the top of the second column. Okay, let's push that there. Now notice that whole article fits right here in the column, and then the next article starts on the next page. That's just something that makes it a little bit easier to read when all the article is right together. Another thing that you want to avoid in design, you insert pictures to illustrate articles. And in Word, we've talked about inserting pictures and being able to move them around. You should not have a picture that's in the middle of the text so that the text goes around the picture, like this. Notice if you're trying to read this, for one thing you don't know Latin, and I don't know Latin that well, but if you're trying to read this, you're going along here, vestibulum ut varius leo, parentesqui, habitant, morbi, tristique senectus et netus, and it gets hard for your eye to go across, back and forth across that picture. Instead of doing that, you could say, maybe move the picture here at the edge of the text. Now the text goes around it, but it doesn't split the text up going across the page. It keeps the text together. Or you could make the picture larger so that it takes up the whole column. Then you're reading, you read here, read down here. Now you've got two lines here kind of by themselves. It might be better if you move your picture down a bit so that you've got a good amount of text up here and down here as well. Now that pushed the article to the next page, so you may want to make some other adjustments as well. Then you have here your call out. Maybe you've got a coming events box that you want to have. All right, now this doesn't look too bad, okay, because you have, this is a different item, okay, and so it's all right if it looks different. If the headline is a different font than the others, if the text is a different font, that's okay, because this all is kind of one item all by itself. But again, you wouldn't want like this first item in the list to be one font, and the next item to be a different font, and so on. You want to be careful that things stay consistent. That just makes your newsletter easier to read, makes it look a bit more professional. So those are just a few hints that you can follow for good newsletter design.